on a unique lot. I think I've got a lot parcel map view below. I'll show you in just a moment. Very unique lot in the sense that it's surrounded on three sides by streets and only shares one property line. And the one property line it does share with the adjacent residence is a flipped orientation. It actually faces the street behind it, which I'll show you here shortly. That said, the applicant provided a photo of the front of their home, as we normally do in our report, so you can see the Google Street View, but they added the notation here, as you could probably see in the other exhibits provided by the applicant, of where the garage would be. So they went to a single car stall garage tucked back on the right side of the existing two-stall car garage, and colors and materials to match the building. What I was saying about the interesting parcel map layout is that the home is on Bird Lane. So here's the home, right? Here's Bird Lane, and here's North Bahar Lane, and then so their home faces Bird Lane, but this home actually faces the cul-de-sac. So the garage addition, if you can still see my mouse, I hope you can, would occur over here on this side. So, you know, in going through and understanding the four findings that need to be met, or the conditions that would be necessary, would be, you know, are there special circumstances applying to the land or the building that could justify, you know, a variance in this district? And I would suggest one of the normal items that we would consider would be, is there something special or interesting about this lot, the home's placement on the lot, that would preclude them from perhaps place the garage elsewhere? You know, is a three-car garage unreasonable for a home in this area? No, it's not. You can see the size and scale of other homes in the neighborhood. The home has streets on the three sides, which is quite unusual. And, you know, unfortunately, this one side where they do share a property line is with another residence. They would want to tuck the garage in right here, and whereas this residence faces the cul-de-sac. So as staff evaluated the four conditions that would need to really be met in order to grant the variance, it really comes down to, you know, do we believe that the application would be materially detrimental to persons residing or working in the vicinity? And so staff's primary concern would be, you know, do we feel that they would have a negative impact on this adjacent home? You will hardly see this garage from the street. It'll be tucked behind landscaping, tucked back behind the front face of the other two-car garage. I believe it really comes down to, does the neighbor think, hey, am I getting crowded? Are we, you know, encroaching too far into the setback? Will that garage make me feel crowded and have a detrimental impact on me as a neighbor or an adjacent property? So other than that, I'd like to hear, if we can, from the applicant. I don't know, Pam, if we received any feedback from that specific neighbor or other neighbors based on the noticing for the use permit, but I would like to know if that neighbor supports the application. If they support the application and believe it's not going to have any impact on them, I think we would support it from the staff level. I'd be happy to answer questions.
I could say I have not had any comments from anyone, any of the neighbors. No one has got in touch with me or sent me any comments.
Mr. Sanks.
Yes.
The setback requirements for generally are there for not just I guess not just because of wanting to keep it separated out, but generally it's also because of fire protection. How far apart, you've got the setback, but how far apart would you say these two houses are if you measured from the one house to the other one?
That's a good question. So what I did on the assessor's parcel map as I was preparing the report is I actually measured. Let me go back up and I'll show you. You see this corner here where there's the kind of the pinch point, if you will, where the home gets closest to the lot line of the home that's requesting the variance. And, you know, I would imagine it's 15 feet. You know, the GIS with the aerials isn't perfect. So it came out to like 13 and a half feet. And so that plus the other 8.5 feet that would still remain would place them, you know, approximately 22 feet apart. If the aerials are pretty close. In terms of building code or fire code, you would just need to make sure you have 10 feet of distance between structures before you would need to worry about fire rating any purposes. So even maintaining 8.5 feet on this side of the property line, presuming, you know, nobody builds to within 1.5 feet of this side, we wouldn't have to worry about fire rating.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the other board members have any questions for Mr. Sang?
I do, Chair. May I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Connor.
I feel like I always ask the same exact question on these, but obviously the 4 questions we have to meet. My thing I'm always looking at is I just want to make sure that we're consistent. And, you know, I know a few months back we had a variance request that, you know, we were questionable because it was, you know, close to the side setback. So I just want to make sure that we're consistent with allowing something like this. And especially within, we've done a similar, I felt like a similar one in the last couple of months. So where are we as far as consistency?
Thank you. And through the chair, Board Member O'Connor, I would suggest from a consistency perspective, and this is why I wanted to be clear to highlight the special nature of what this lot is and how large our setbacks are from adjacent streets. So as this building was originally placed, you can see the relatively large setbacks from Bird Lane and then the street that wraps behind it. And you can see how much land area is provided there so that we provide streetscapes that have relatively deep setbacks, right? So we have a spacious feeling community from the community street. So where that is the case, I'm not certain, you know, in the past, the concern that I'd had, or I shouldn't say speak in terms of I, but from staff's perspective would be when you have a rectilinear lot that looks just like every other lot on the street, there's nothing special about the home placement, there's nothing special about its setbacks, and it more or less looks like every other home on the street. They all have 2-car garages, and this guy wants to do something different and, you know, get really close to the property line, and then it starts to raise flags. Well, are you able to suggest that how are we able to suggest there are special circumstances or conditions applying to that parcel when it looks just like every other lot on the street? If you look at this lot, it's very strange to have, you know, we've had issues even with just corner lots, let alone lots that actually have streets on all 3 sides of a 4-sided lot. So it really kind of forces the location of the home into the centralized portion of the parcel. And it leaves you, you know, with its garage orientation currently over here, if you can see, I don't know how if my mouse shows up that well, it kind of only leaves that area to logically place a 3rd stall garage next to an existing garage. So they'll take access off of the same driveway and maybe tee off a bit. That's where I saw how you get to A, because obviously if you can't make A happen, you can't make B happen because A doesn't exist. So then it ripples through A, B, and C. And so it's like necessary for preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights. And then you start to look in the neighborhood and think, okay, let's look at all of the other homes in the neighborhood. And is there a prevalence of, based on home size and other features that would make this semi-equitable with other homes in the neighborhood? Maybe some are less, some are larger. And I think it's not out of character for the neighborhood. If you even look at the footprints, I mean, the home that's just 1 lot down is enormous compared to this lot. So it's not out of character and overbuilding and staff's perspective. So I hope that answers your question in terms of how we determine the special circumstance, which really leads you through A, B, and nearly C.
And
Are there any other
Brian,
questions for Mr. Sang?
I'm sorry, I just to Brian's point, also we did end up approving that variance. I think that he's referring to. Is that correct? Can you confirm that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. I have a question for more for the applicant than for Jason, and it probably the same one that Jason was asking is if the adjoining neighbor has any objections, if the homeowner knows his neighbor and knows if he has any objections.
And Chair, if I may, I had language in the report prior where I'd actually put in there if the applicant expressly has any comment from the neighbor rather than just a notice getting sent out and perhaps not getting a response. Perhaps they live in Canada and come here 2 months of the year. Those sorts of things where maybe they wouldn't read it. If they've had communication, it would be great to know that from the applicant. Right?
At this point in time, I think the best thing is let the applicant speak to their application, and then they can address the question from staff and the commission.
Thank you. I did talk to my neighbor, Perry, who I've known for the 18 years that I've lived here, and he has no problem with the single car extension encroaching into the variance. I did talk to him and brought him out and showed him what I was thinking, and he said he had no problem with it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Abbott. Do you have any other comments about your application? Anything else that you think the board should know?
No, I think Jason described my issues perfectly, and thank you. I just want to, this is phase one of trying to bring my home up to the standard that we all kind of expect for the park, and the only one that would require a variance. So I just really, I appreciate your time, and thank you for giving it thought.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Are there any other comments or questions by any of the board members? Okay, is there any discussion that needs to be had, or are we ready for some sort of a motion?
Excuse me, Chair. There might be someone who joined the meeting that might want to speak. Was there anyone from the public that wished to speak?
Did we just lose the?
I can still hear, I see Pam is muted as she's probably asking someone a question, but I still hear you, Chair.
Okay, it sounds like we're there. Sounds like we're at a point now where a motion would be appropriate. Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion. My motion is that we approve the setback encroachment at 605 East Bird Lane based off of the staff recommendations and the fact that we believe that they are able to complete A, B, and C, and D of the requirements.
I'll
Is there a
second.
second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? It passes unanimously. Pam, do we have minutes that we need to approve?
Yes, the minutes from the October 1st, 2020 meeting.
Is there a motion to approve those minutes for the October 2020 meeting?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
A second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. At this point, can we have a motion to adjourn the Board of Adjustment?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjourning the Board of Adjustment, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? No nays. So we will adjourn the Board of Adjustment so we can go into our regular meeting.
Okay, are we all ready?
Yes, I believe so.
So I'll call to order the for the City of Litchfield Park, the Design Review Board. And our first item of business are design plans for second-story addition exterior remodel proposed for 268 Laguna Drive West. I believe this is one that we approved a variance for sometime in the last few months also. So, Jason, would you like to give the staff report?
Certainly, and thank you, Chair and Design Review Board members. I'll go ahead and do as I normally do and share my screen. Just give me one moment. And we can walk through with members of the public the staff report with the embedded images. So yes, that is correct. Back on October 1st, 2020, the minutes that you just approved in the prior hearing, the Board of Adjustment did approve a setback, not a setback variance, but a second floor addition variance to allow the second floor of the home to be built after a somewhat lengthy discussion over what was occurring in the neighborhood, that there was some second floors on different zone properties, etc. over the years. You can even see one next door. And so now the applicant, the homeowner's back with design plans to illustrate what their plans are for the property. And so I've got that embedded here for the public. You can see that they're bringing a sand finish, stucco finish onto the second level as well. They've added some fenestration. They've got a walkout balcony, a little tile roof element over that pop-out balcony. They're keeping the carport that you can see in the image here. So the second floor addition is really going to occur straight up here, and then it's going to extend over, and then it will drop down before you get to the carport in the next neighbor. So I'm not sure how well the images are coming across in terms of, I'm on a very large screen so I can read them fine. But I'm just going over the details. They've got roof socket and brackets painted to match their existing carport. So they're trying to tie in pieces and elements to the existing carport structure. And then matched glass and do pop outs around the windows. I think that, the proposed elevations show an attempt to match other two-story buildings in the neighborhood, more or less, tie into their finishes. If the home's trying to tie into its original, relatively kind of muted architectural state as it was. And we think that the balcony over the front courtyard is kind of a nice touch. It brings a lot of interest to the front of the home, which would otherwise probably be somewhat muted as well if it didn't have this nice balcony with the roof tile addition. So that said, we find that generally speaking, the proposal is consistent with the second floor addition variance that was approved back in October by the Board of Adjustment. And we support the design plans for the home, subject to the following conditions: that the colors, building materials, and finishes shall match those of the existing residence or as modified by the exhibits provided by the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Is the homeowner, property owner here, or the applicant?
Yes, I am here.
Okay. Can you state your name for the record?
My name is Ross Rossano.
And you're the owner or the builder?
I'm the owner.
Okay, thank you. All right, do you have anything to add to the staff report or Jason's review?
No, that pretty much covers it. I mean, I wasn't trying to do anything to kind of change the look of the neighborhood, and yeah, kind of the idea of that balcony was kind of make it somewhat of a focal point just to try to dress the house up a little bit. So I think the design we came up with fits everything we're looking to do, and I'm excited.
Okay. Do any of the board members have questions for the staff or the applicant? Everybody's muted.
So I have a question. I guess I was just looking over the plans. It looks like there's equipment on the roof, and it looks like there's notes that say that it's fully screened. So there's a parapet apparently. Is it on all the sides that the parapet will cover?
Yes, the parapet will be on all of the sides of the house.
Is the height of the parapet sufficient to screen the air conditioning unit?
Yes, I believe it'll be a full 3 feet, if I'm not mistaken. Actually,
it's 4 feet.
4 feet. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. Any other questions? Do we have, Jason, do you have like, there was a section view of that? Can you put that up?
Certainly, if you just give me one moment, I actually have the exhibits file. Just give me 1 second. Let me see if I have it in my packet. 1 second. I'm just going to toggle over. I'm going to share my screen, and then I'm going to zoom in, if you don't mind, as soon as I can share. This is I'm switching from Word to PDF viewer, so just give me 1 second. So I've got the screen pulled up, and I'll show you the packet that I've got for 268 Laguna Drive. This is kind of going through the narrative as to the background on how they achieved the variance. This, of course, is showing the aerial view of the parcel. I want to make sure I've got everything here. I didn't cut paste everything into the report. Hold on 1 second as we get to exhibits that vary in different sizes. So this will show you the existing front elevation. This will show you the new front elevation, aerial map. And I presume the section would be coming up here soon. This is a more illustrative plot plan, if you will. 17 pages here, just give me a second. Shows the compressor. Hold on 1 second. Tell me when you'd like me to stop, if you don't mind, Chair.
Okay, it's just like a section cut through the building that will show.
Yeah, all right, great. This is obviously the floor plan, first and second floor, and I should be at the section here shortly. Oh. All right, we should be close here. This, I believe, is the roof plan. It would show the screening with the parapet, the new second floor package unit for the AC condenser. I don't think this is Zoom.
Should be next
I
up.
think it's the next one. Sorry, I had my PDF viewer is a little slow. My laptop's not the fastest.
Big files.
Yeah, and it's just, here we go. It's just giving the other side elevations, and looks like perhaps the section view must be the last page or so. If you don't mind giving it a second to load. Here we go, finally, right? To page 17 after all that. Let me see if I can zoom in for you so you can see a little better. All right, it's gonna load. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's not showing that slope on the flat roof portion. I'm just curious which direction it would slope and if that will affect the curve.
It's sloping to the south. I think that was my question too. I show draining to the south, but that's another person's property. At least I was confused about that. So that was a question I had. Is it,
No, the south is my property. The zero lot line is to the north, and the roof currently drains to the south.
okay. Okay. Yeah, that was my question. So you're looking at an east-west cut, and the drainage is coming to the south, so you wouldn't see it on the section so much. Although, yeah, there's a. You would see it on A, not so much on B or C.
Yeah, so the section of B, that one's going to drain. I think right now it's showing it's draining to the west, but I might switch that so it's draining to the east, which would be the front of the house. And then for the second level, the upper portion on section option A, that one's going to be draining from left to right. The right would be the south side of the house.
Okay, yeah.
Either way, it looks like that slope is not going to impact you know, the mechanical is still going to be hidden, looks like, from that section. So that was my concern. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Sace, could you confirm what's the lot coverage on these lots? What's the max lot coverage?
You know, that's a good question. I will need to go back and check. I believe that they were building on top of the existing lot, so that wouldn't impact the lot coverage. It would impact the gross floor area, but we don't have a development standard for that. Let me double check. I think it's going to be on the site plan. So I would, if you don't mind, first, Board Member O'Connor, if I can address the applicant, if they're adding any additional floor area to the ground level or not. I thought they were just going vertical on the existing residence.
So the front door is coming out about 6 feet closer to the street.
Okay.
And then we are enclosing what is an existing sunroom, but that already has a roof over it. So that would be the only changes to the ground.
You know, Board Member O'Connor, I'll need to flip through the exhibits. I didn't really evaluate lot coverage on this lot. It's probably allowed to have 50 or 60% based on the zoning, but I'll have to double check if it's in the development standards table. Here's the site plan. I don't believe we've indicated the lot coverage on it. We have actually quite a large rear yard going on here. I didn't realize that. I would ask if the architect can recall evaluating lot coverage. We really didn't.
Yeah, I'm David Ross with Ross Design Group. It's we calc 43%. It's on the cover sheet. So we calc 43%.
Thank you. It is there, sorry. I got back to that page. I think you can see it now. It's right here, lot coverage 43%. And it's residential cluster zoning. I'd have to double check if there's anything special about this neighborhood versus it being just base code. I could pull that up very quickly on the web and leave this out and see what the residential cluster lot coverage calculation is. Just give me 1 second.
Is there also a new covered patio to the rear?
Yes.
Is that also included in your lot coverage then?
I believe it is. Hang on. Should be.
And it also appears that the city webpage is updated. So the planning and zoning page is a little bit different than it was before. I don't see the zoning ordinance on
It, excuse me, I was able to call it up, and it says the maximum coverage shall be 60% of the development area.
Thanks, Pam. I had a feeling, off the cuff, I wasn't sure, but because it's residential cluster, so they're well within their lot coverage allowance.
Okay. Well, presuming that the new covered patio also fits in there, then there shouldn't be any other issue with the lot coverage.
Isn't the lot coverage, I guess I'm reading it, the existing lot coverage is at 43%, but that's not accounting for any of the new livable, right? Am I missing something there?
Yeah, but new livable is stacked on top, so the lot is not covered anymore. But if they're keeping basically the same footprint,
Which we are, but I think the new patio cover in the rear, which it looks like it's 240 square feet. I don't think we have that in there. So we'd have to add the 240 square feet, to it.
So if you had 240 square feet, I mean, just doing some quick, simple math here, you would need to be covering over 3,400 square feet of the lot, which with 200 or 300 additional square feet, you're not going to get anywhere close to 60%. But that's correct. The chair is correct, and Board Member O'Connor. Any new additional livable built upon what's existing does not count towards lot coverage.
And we would make sure to put it on the drawings, of course, for the construction documents when they would get submitted, adding the patio cover as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for staff or applicant? Would anyone like to propose a motion?
I'll propose a motion to approve the package proposed as proposed for 268 Laguna Drive West. Were there any? I don't think there were any staff stipulations on this one, right? Yeah, just subject to the all colors, building materials, and finishes matching the existing and the exhibits presented.
Okay, a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time.
Thanks. Okay, next up, let me get to my agenda back. Oops. Next up is design plans for an addition exterior remodel proposed for 4792 North Barranco Drive. Jason, do you have your staff report on this?
I do. Thank you, Chair and board members. So the applicant for this request is seeking a small addition to the front of their home to provide, as they say in their documents, an ADA accessible suite. Although the addition is relatively small, the partial front elevation provided by the applicant indicates that it will change the roof line along the street. So if you look over here on the house, I had a little bit of a moment trying to understand what was going on with the front elevation when I first looked at it, because it just like appeared that the home got narrower. So I was trying to figure out what happened, but I realized that what they weren't reflecting was the entry and the garage, that it would be extending for a full front elevation. So they focused just on what the addition would be, which would be this section of the home, the existing street view, with the windows with the kind of cantilevered louvers over the top of that. And they were going to bring that forward, and then they were going to change the roof line so that it would match kind of more or less what's happening over the garage and over this the centralized portion of the side entry garage of the home. So that's the primary change, really. This is going to bring livable forward, which is, in one respect, a nice thing, is to bring the livable portion of the home forward towards the street rather than it just be all garage up front, because then there'll be activity and eyes on the street and those sorts of things. The concern a little bit that we had is that, with this portion of the home set back, it wasn't kind of articulated with the stone and the pop out sill, if you will, at the top of the stone base. And now that it pops out, it looks, I don't know if it looks a little strange and two-dimensional. I'm not an architect myself, but visualizing it, it seems like not only do we not have the stone and the sill pop out, but now we have this additional roof line that's occurring above it. So it looks a bit of a broad face wall, even though that the louvers are there to kind of help to offset that. And so staff just kind of had that one concern. Otherwise, we don't have any other concerns with the request. Is there enough going on with this projection now that it will become more prominent? And should we consider or ask the applicant to consider replicating the stone veneer and the sill now that that's been brought forward to the street? With that, I'd be happy to answer questions. Again, we're supportive, but maybe see something more happening here. I'm just not sure if the black line elevations aren't really bringing it across what it might look like.
I'm wondering also about the gable and creating a valley that goes, it'll be a difficult valley to drain the rain off. So I was wondering, I don't know if a hip would help with that, and it also would bring down some of that height of the stucco. If they did more of a hip roof that you can see at the entry, it looks like there's a hip style back there, so it wouldn't be too out of character with the rest of the house. That is something I'm not seeing the roof plan. I don't know if they're creating problem for themselves with the gable end. Are there is the applicant here and have anything to add to the staff report?
Yeah, this is Mike Fernandez with 360 Construction.
Mm-hmm.
The idea was to try and the reason why there is not stone on that front elevation that we're bringing out is just because we were trying to keep the look of the addition as close to the original design of the home as possible. But the homeowner would not be opposed to doing a hip versus the gable.
Okay. I think that would help with kind of there's a lot of stucco area up front. I think having a little bit more tile might balance that out.
Yeah, and as far as bringing the stone around the front, basically we were planning on just using those architectural sills. We were going to reuse that design on the front of the new elevation to again just try and match what the builder was trying to achieve with the original design of the house.
So it doesn't have, you can see it doesn't have a stone wainscot right now. You're just pulling that whole section out.
Exactly. But again, if there's an issue with the stone, it wouldn't be a big deal to add a stone wainscoting to the front of that addition.
How far would you have to wrap it around to get to like the side wall or something? Because if you just wrap it around a little bit, it won't.
Yeah, we would have to wrap it back to at least where the fence return is.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd probably be about 10 feet or so on the side elevation.
Okay. Do any of the other board members have any opinion? I don't.
My opinion is that I think it looks better without the wainscot.
That's what I was thinking too.
I don't think, I think I like the idea of the hip roof because I think, like you said, it takes away some of the stucco, but to force them to wrap around the stone, I wouldn't support that.
I agree. Do any other board members have questions for staff or applicant? No. Would someone like to make a motion? Anybody there? I can't see.
I'll make a motion that we approve the application as submitted with the addition of the valley rather than the hip. With,
you mean the
colors,
hip versus the gable?
Hip versus the gable, texture and colors to match.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I,
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, design plans for an addition, exterior remodel proposed for 204 Campbell Avenue. Jason, do you have your review for this one?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Also, it looks like there's someone that's waiting in the waiting room, just FYI. I'm not certain if they're involved with this project. It popped up on my screen. Yes, so we've designed plans for an addition and exterior remodel for 204 West Campbell Avenue. The Google Street View is pictured below. Interesting home, stump block exterior, very low flat roof, has a side turn-in garage, and just kind of unique architecture from perhaps its time period. The requested addition is relatively small. It's going to be occurring kind of right back in here, where they're going to be filling in what I believe will be an extension to the master bedroom, really to create a master bathroom. And then what they've done is, as opposed to adding additional slump block, the intention would be to just do the addition and expand upon the use of the elements of the existing siding that's already on the house, rather than try to match the slump block. I'm not certain if it's a material choice based on they prefer to break up and have less slump block, or if it's difficult for them to match the slump block that was constructed originally with the home. But as staff reviewed it, we contemplated this, its location on the home, tucked kind of back here in the corner, the existence of the material being elsewhere on the home, and perhaps actually breaking up some of the prevalence of the slump block, and softening up a little bit of the exterior, which is tucked back behind this driveway and little basketball hoop and some of this dense landscaping. That said, I think generally, we say this in most of our remodel and addition recommendations. It's going to add value to the home. It's expanding the master bedroom and bathroom to give it more of kind of what contemporary buyer needs are. And we support the application as filed with the exhibits provided by the applicant.
So is the applicant present?
I'm here.
Okay, could you give your name for the record?
Katie Parton.
Okay. And you're the homeowner or the builder?
I'm the builder.
Okay, thank you. So, is the footprint on the site, but that's everything's existing? Where are we adding is just E?
Correct.
Okay.
And Chair, I do have the full design plans if you want me to toggle over to the PDF of the package application.
Okay. And then maybe the homeowner, you can, or the builder, you can tell why the change of materials, your design idea for that.
Exactly what he said. Just to make sure, we're not sure if that block is available, but if we can save that partial block that's there currently, we're going to see if we can try to put that into the areas that we can, or save some of the blocks. The homeowners do like that look, but if we had to, if we couldn't find that type of block, then we will use the other paneling.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board members? Is it the color going to match the blue that's already there, that's already on the house?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? If there's no questions, that someone propose a motion?
Sure, I move that we approve the application for the addition at, help me with the address here.
204.
204 West Campbell. And based off of the staff recommendations and any requirements noted.
Okay, a motion, may I have a second?
Second.
Okay, you have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, next, 520 East Cascada. Hold on, let me get my agenda. Scroll back down. Design plans for roof-mounted solar panel installation proposed for 520 Cascada Drive. Jason, give your report.
I do, thank you, Chair. So this is a unique situation where we've got design plans for roof-mounted solar installation on a home that has both pitched roof elements and flat roof elements, and they're pitched, so they're shown on both. So in review of the project, I have the full set of design plans as well. Let me make sure I'm actually not getting the two confused. No, that's correct. The home has the applicant for the project has provided design plans for the installation of solar panels on both the pitched roof of the residence, which would be facing the street, as well as the rear flat roof portion of the residence, which is not seen from the street. So staff finds that the front facing array actually meets the code's criteria for being attached in the flat quadrangular shape and could generally be approved administratively. However, on the rear portion of the residence, the array is placed on the flat roof portion of the home, and the array is about 2 feet 2 inches tall, and it appears to be fully unscreened. For the applicant, the production of this array is important because it's about 40% of the capacity of the entire installation. So we don't have any indication from the applicant that the array in the rear would meet the direct code criteria that says it shall be screened from public view. The height of such screening at a minimum shall be the height of the solar energy collector panel, and that the screening may be done by a parapet or by a screening wall replicating the materials of the building. Looking at the aerial view of this, when I was looking at the property, I did notice that this home backs to the rear side yard of the home next door, so it's like the pool area, the backyard of that home will be looking directly at the back of this house off to the side. So we do believe that it will be visible, and that they'll likely be looking at the underside of the array. So I would like if the applicant could provide staff and the board some idea of if there's any way to perhaps at least describe, or if there's screening mechanisms so that we're not looking at the underside of the 2 foot 2 inch tall pitched array, and we're seeing all the undercarriage, if you will, of the panel support system. That would be the general preference, but I defer to the board, and if I'd be happy to answer any questions or bring up the PDFs of the application of itself. I know it's in your packets, but if you'd like me to bring it up, I have that available too.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Okay, so are you understanding the staff's question about the flat portion of the roof receiving a tilted panel and being visible to the neighboring property?
Yes, I understand that. I don't believe we have any kind of screening that could be placed there to kind of block that from the neighbors seeing the back of the panels, unfortunately, since that's going to be tilted on a 15-degree angle. I honestly have never seen flat panels installed in a flat area being screened. I've seen kind of like the bird netting going around the ones that are on regular roofs, but not on a flat roof per se.
So this is like a patio section of the home?
I would say, I believe it is kind of a patio. There is a tilted roof and then it becomes flat at the end. And then I believe that there is another portion of a patio, kind of like a porch, after that flat area also, if I remember correctly on the design.
And then
Bring up the
I guess
plans, I can pull them up.
if there's, generally, there's no objection to, if the panels were flat, they would meet, but the production level would go down from there, I'm guessing, or?
Yes. So we, after I spoke with somebody from the city over the phone and they explained to me that we would have to go through this meeting, I tried running a few scenarios where to see if it would pretty much make sense to put panels on that tilted roof on the back. But unfortunately, production drops quite a bit, and to bring that production back up, customer would have to get more solar panels, and then it becomes not cost effective. So it kind of loses the purpose of having a lower electricity payment when you're having to put more panels because of how the array has been set up. So the best roof for solar are south. If they're facing south, we have the best production, and putting them on the north, that would drop significantly.
Comments from the board members?
I have a question. So it looks like the two options that you looked at were, what the proposed solution, and then also putting them on what would be the north facing roof. Did you consider, is it possible to just actually not pitch the solar panels on the flat portion, just make them flat?
So if we make them flat, the pitched roof will be shading on them the majority of the day, which will also drop production. So when they're on a flat surface, we usually have to tilt them 15 degrees to get as much sun exposure as possible.
Chair, if I may just add, I recall conversations in the past where, I mean, right now we're talking about seeing the undercarriage of this entire array, right? But in the past where we've had flat roof with pitched panels, we talked about were there solutions where we could like provide end caps almost that would kind of obscure visibility from even just the edges so that we wouldn't see the kind of the triangular space there, like it would cover it. As I'm understanding from the applicant, they don't have some sort of way to provide a paneling or anything that would screen the undercarriage or kind of indicate what that might look like. The concern would be you're going to have structural support items. I'm not sure if there's cabling items or other sorts of things that occur to where it makes it really look utilitarian, as it is a utility, and that if that would have a negative impact on the adjacent homeowners, kind of property and their rear yard where their pool is like right over here. So just a thought.
Yeah,
I've never seen a material or any sort of paneling, so I don't know if it is out there. I could definitely look into it and see if that's something that it's available on the market for us to add it to the system. But again, I've never seen it, and but I can definitely try to look into it and see if that's a possibility.
I think the only thing I've ever seen, they use like a perforated metal panel so that it still has airflow. Sometimes it doesn't look much better.
Can I ask also, it does seem like there is a fair amount of surface area still on that north facing pitched roof, and then even some like east and west did you consider, just trying not to get the flat panel? I mean, fitting all of the panels you need in the array on the front pitch area?
Yes, that was the original plan. But homeowner requested us to put those on the back. So it wouldn't be as visible from the front of the house. So he requested us to put as many panels possible on the back, as he also has plans to maybe expand his garage. And for that, he would need to have some sort of setback on the roof in the front for that to happen, I believe. So those plans were designed based on the homeowner's desires and requests.
Yeah, this is where we get into our pickle all the time. Is our code is pretty specific and doesn't give us many options to deal with it with the tilted panels on a flat roof. I'm not sure can fix that right now or make sure that your production level stays as high as you would like or what you've promised the homeowner without ignoring our code. Do any of the other board members have any comments about this? I don't know. We can't really change the code tonight, so it's hard for me to just say, "Oh, just approve it," because it doesn't meet the code and it doesn't seem that there's an attempt to do it. So.
Any other options of building something to obscure the view?
I mean, like I said, we could look into something to see if there is any sort of materials that we could maybe build something around. But again, I've never seen it and we've never done it before. So that would be something kind of new, and finding a right material that would still be breathable and also find a way to anchor that into the flat roof to make sure everything is secure for winds and all of that. I mean, it's something that we could definitely look into and try to figure out a way to cover that. But again, that's something that it would have to be, I would have to get our engineers to look around and see if there's any sort of paneling material or something that we could use to cover that up.
That also presents sometimes a structural, because a lot of those patio covers are not built very with any extra strength to handle like a parapet or anything like that.
So that part of the roof it is. That other square that's kind of like a porch. Mm-hmm. That one wouldn't hold the weight of the panels. But the flat area where we have the array there could. Yeah,
they'll hold the panels, but I'm saying if we were to ask you to build a pair and
add more
wall,
yes,
it might not work structurally.
Yes.
And then again, that also affects drainage and everything else.
Yes.
Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
What is the customer's timeline on this? Are they wanting to get this done ASAP, or is it? Are
the solar panels?
Yes.
Yes. So plans are to, as soon as we get permits on it, to get it on schedule to install.
This is where I feel like our hands are kind of tied, because without a variance, or we don't have a lot of latitude to just say, we can do small things that are, a little bit in view or whatever, but this is going to be a total view and totally tilted. I don't think we've approved anything like this yet.
Sure, I'd add it's a 60-foot span, so it is a relatively long stretch of panels. If anybody needs me to bring up the parcel map viewer to see the context of it with the neighbor's yard, just let me know. And
I would like to see that if you could pull it up.
sure, just give me 1 second if you don't mind. I'll leave this up while I work on the Google side. So give me 1 second, okay?
Thank you.
Chair, while he's bringing that up, I have a question. In the staff report, it indicates that the panels in question represent about 40% of what the electrical output is going to be as they're presented. My question would be, we've heard that it makes it economically less desirable, but how big of a percentage are we talking about if in fact they lowered these panels, if not completely, but to some degree, because we have to be reasonable, but we are bound by our own code. And, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that the applicant is entitled to every single, watt of electricity they can get. So I'm just curious, how much of a difference we'll be talking about if there was some concession made and they at least lowered some of that tilt.
Does this help everybody see the context?
I'm gonna run some numbers really quick right here to answer your question about the percentage. Do you wanted to see the percentage economically, or you just wanted to see percentage of production that would drop if we?
Now, why don't you show me the drop in production, and then you can, if you have the numbers, you can tell us what the economic impact is.
Yes, just a minute. Let me run some numbers on my software really quick.
I think this rear yard is actually visible from almost all the neighboring swimming pools and backyards. Dave, is your question, I mean, it still doesn't address our code issues though. With the tilt, I guess we don't deal with production or economies of the application. The code doesn't address how we can.
Oh, I understand that. I just want to know, they've made an economic argument, but every applicant can make an economic argument. I want to know what the economics are. What are we talking about because in some of these ones in the past, we've heard that, and then the applicants have made adjustments where there was some middle ground where they got a little bit less electrical, but then they lowered the panel. Because otherwise, I think we're going to end up being bound by our code. And, because it is what it is. It's not a question of a variance. We have a very small amount of leeway on this.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, yes.
I really agree with David on this, and I was just kind of looking, the next item on the agenda is a flat roof as well. And they actually have the information about making sure that it's not visible from the road. And there looks like a parapet there. I mean, I think the way the code is written, we have to have them find some way to obscure the view. We don't really have a choice unless they can come up with something to find a way.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes, who's speaking?
Hi, yeah, this is actually Brent with Green Muscle Solar. Yeah, we're going to be probably the next one you'll speak about with solar on the flat roof with the parapet walls. But I just did some rough numbers while I was waiting and just listening on this particular project here. It should only be right around a 3% production loss total if you drop those panels another 5 degrees from 15 degrees to 10 degrees. So that's, and if you were to drop it all the way down to 5-degree tilt, you should only be losing about 6%. So if she's able to come back with those numbers, that's probably what she'll come back with.
Do you know what the approximate, thank you for sharing this, this is the staff member. Do you know what the approximate height would be if we're currently at 2 foot, 1 or 2 inches, and we were to drop it, the tilt to down to something as low as even 5%? That sounds like a third, not nearly as tall.
It would be like a third, so 24.
Third, right. Okay. So we'd be talking about the difference between 21 or 22 inches and an 8 or a 9 inch high array.
Yeah, so the type of system that we're using, it's a weighted ballast system. It's all engineered on the flat roof that again, Green Muscle on the next project that we're installing on. And it has a 10-degree tilt, and yeah, it's about 12 inches at the highest point off that flat roof. The difference is, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but our panels go long ways sideways. So it's what we would call a landscape install instead of portrait. When you go portrait on a flat roof and you tilt it, it's going to stick up higher, right? Versus going, sideways in a landscape. So again, I don't want to speak out of place, but I think maybe on that other project that was just referenced, if maybe they put it in landscape, they could potentially even keep it at 15 degrees, or maybe drop it down to 10 degrees, and you won't really see the underside of the panels. You'll see more really just shading, but you're not going to really see the underside of the panels if you can, definitely do it at 10 degrees, I think, and potentially in landscape versus portrait.
Actually looks like, sorry.
I don't know if there's room to do, they'll have to drop the number of panels if they do the landscape.
Sorry, man. Yeah. It looks like they could actually turn them sideways and fit two to a space.
That was the other thing. Yeah, depending on the fire code setback, they might be able to put it in landscape and potentially do 2 rows. Yeah, so I think there's some options there.
Don't they, when you do it in 2 rows, the one shades the other one?
It can, but again, if you're going from 15 degrees down to 10 degrees, or worst case, even 5 degrees, you don't have as much shade. So on the 10 degrees, because we've done quite a few flat roofs, and you don't really have too much of a shading issue if you can, keep it around 10 degrees.
Maybe the sacrifice is to put a few more on the front too.
Mm.
I shouldn't say sacrifice, maybe compromise is a better word.
Compromise.
Sorry, it took me a minute. I was kind of listening to you guys too, and I was checking to see how many panels I could fit on a landscape position instead of the portrait, and I was able to bring it down to 10 panels back there, which I would have to transfer some panels up to the front, which like I said, I am okay with. The homeowner had requested to have those in the back. I mean, for me, I'm okay transferring the panels up front. I was just gonna have to break the news to the homeowner and say, hey, unfortunately, the city did not approve this. And there's kind of nothing we can do about it. But with only being able to fit 10 back there, and putting more panels to the front, our production kind of stayed the same. And I can dropping the tilts to 10%. It dropped our production maybe like 3%, which it's still within tolerance of our variance that we can go with. But the only thing that kind of comes to mind is if the homeowner is trying to maybe eventually expand his garage, then it might be, we might not have.
The solar panels are where the garage is now, though. So they're gonna have to get moved regardless. And maybe the new expanded plan will allow for some panels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we would appreciate the effort to turn those landscapes so that the pitch is not so high on the back side.
I mean, I could check with the engineers, because the software that I'm using right now, it's I mean, I have some setbacks, but I don't have exact measurements on it. But the engineers will have the exact measurements to see if we can maybe put a couple rows there, and not have as many panels on the front, kind of a little bit of what the homeowner wants, and have more panels on the back, but not standing up so high on a 10 tilt degree with the panels in landscape instead of portrait. I could definitely check on that.
What's our usual allowed height? Is it 10 inches or?
I believe it's 11 inches.
11 inches. Okay. All right. See, and that part would be a lot easier for us to say it's making it the best attempt to fit within the code. So if you're all right, we can table this application. We could, or possibly even, if the board members feel it's appropriate to let the staff approve based on our comments and what we've, some of the compromises we've suggested. If anybody else feels that way.
I trust the staff based off of our discussion to be able to hopefully work a solution out.
If I may add, I think Pam and I certainly are here. She's going to have the meeting minutes. Again, repeating the initial point was that the actual solar array that's on the pitched roof of the home, although it faces the front, technically meets the intent of the code because of its quadrangular shape and it's as flat against the roof as possible. With the color of even the roof tile and the solar panels aren't so far off that it's going to jump out at you. I believe that we would be able to accomplish it at the staff level if that's the direction of the board, is to reduce the pitched panels on the flat portion of the roof to 10 inches maximum, perhaps at a landscape format, and then bring some of those panels. It appears we would lose about 6 on the back, bring those 6 panels to the front of the home and keep still within the code requirements. Then you won't be so far out of kind of, if you will, the zoning ordinance boundaries.
Yeah.
For the board.
She also suggested she might be able to do a double landscape row in the back, which
Okay.
then they wouldn't need to add to the front either. So
Great.
Yeah, I'll check with the engineers, see if we can fit a couple rows on the back. If that's possible, then I believe homeowner would be more pleased with that, and we would take some of the panels on the front. But if that's not possible, then we would just bring all those panels to the front with the array that it's already there, and keep the back with only what we can fit there on landscape.
Okay. So would someone like to propose a motion? I don't know if we need to table this just in case, or just, I think we table it with the staff. I'm not sure how to word that. Dave?
Yeah, Chair, I'll take a stab at it. I move that we table this to our next meeting with the proviso that if in the interim, staff is able to put together a compromise with the applicant, covering all the things that we've talked about and the suggestions that Mr. Sanks just made, then staff would have the authority to go ahead and approve it, and we would not have to see it. If you're not able to reach what you believe is what we've been talking about, then it would come back on our next meeting.
Thank you. Would someone like to second Dave's motion?
Sure. I'd love to second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, and our last. Come on. Why my mouse is slow. Okay, design plans for a roof-mounted solar panel installation proposed for 241 Laguna Drive East. And is this one, Jason, would you give your report for this one?
Sure, and I'm just making sure my screen share is working. I'm toggling between like PDF viewers and Word viewers and Google viewers. Can you see the report?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So yes, this item is design plans for roof-mounted solar panel installation at 241 Laguna Drive East. For the zoning ordinance on flat roofs, of course, we've kind of just been discussing that the solar energy collector panels shall be positioned within the field of the roof plane as far from the edge as possible. And if 10 inches above the roof surface, whether rack mounted or flat mounted, shall be subject to the following requirements. Based on the exhibits provided by the applicant, it appeared that the tilted arrays will not be screened from view by a parapet wall, because I thought I noted that it was only a 1-inch tall parapet, but I thought the gentleman spoke earlier and said it was taller than that. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Tried to provide a street view image that showed that the neighbor also has tilted arrays on their home in a kind of a similar fashion as to what's proposed, although I think that these are different construction type. They seem to have a different structural support system based on the detail sheets. And I, of course, have those as backup if you'd like to view them as we discuss this further. If possible, have the applicant or the gentleman from the solar energy company discuss the overall height of the array and precisely how much screening there is from the existing parapet, so we know what's visible or not visible from the public street.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is Brent. Obviously, I just spoke earlier on the other project. So yeah, there is, unfortunately, I don't have the exact dimensions of that parapet wall, but we're about, when you add the panel on there, yeah, we're about 12 inches at the highest point. What we actually did was we went out to the property and we actually laid everything out exactly where the panels are going to go, and added, with the tape measure, measured out the 12 inches with someone up on the roof, and I actually went down to the sidewalk across the street to see if any of the panels would be seen above that parapet wall. And based off of the 10-degree tilt with the ballast system we're using, you won't be able to see any of the panels even across the street on the sidewalk on the other side. So everything will be completely screened. And I think, yeah, if you look at the street level, the other panels, those are probably closer to about, 2 feet. Obviously there's no parapet wall, but if you run kind of visually a line across where the top of the roof or the parapet wall would be on the property we're installing on, you could see it's almost lined up with the top of those panels. And those are certainly probably about, 10 to 12 inches minimum higher than the height of our panels.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from board members? Okay. Anyone like to make a motion, or you have any further questions? So if this is fully, the only reason we're here, it was a question of the parapet screening. And then did you, the applicant take you said you had put a tape measure and had a photo. I don't know if that's something you have left that you could share with us.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we didn't. We were told about this meeting a few days ago, and I didn't have a chance to go back out there. Originally, when we designed the system and presented the proposal to the customer, as soon as he said he wanted to move forward, we actually went up there and did it. So this was, actually, a couple months ago that we did it. So I mean, I could go out there, but I mean, I'm, owner of the company, and I'll vouch that we're definitely not going to be, it won't be seen, but if needed, I can provide that information, photos and measurements and things of that sort. But like I said, we laid everything out where the panels were going to go, and meticulously measured, the height of each panel at that 12 inches to see if anything would be seen, because we had the option to we have a 5-degree ballast system, where we could even drop it lower, that we thought we might have to do. And we didn't need to, so we're able to keep it at 10 degrees.
And I just would like to ask, that includes, you spoke about the view from the street not being visible, but we just spoke with the last applicant extensively because of the backyard view. Can you speak to the backyard view? Is it consistent as well?
Yeah, so yeah, that's, it mentioned street view. Originally, I guess when we looked at the notes, we didn't even think to look at the backyard. Honestly, I can't tell you if there's a parapet wall on the back portion of the home. I mean, I know that if you look at the satellite image, the backyards, the lots are a little smaller for the backyards. So I don't know how visible they would be even without a parapet wall, but honestly, I'm not sure if there's a parapet wall back there or not. I mean, that's something we can certainly look into, and I'm happy to provide that information, but I don't know offhand.
Any other questions or comments from the board members? These ones the backyards are tight together, so that's almost the same. It would be almost like a street view. You can't really get back far enough in any of the backyards to see. Maybe if you're in one of the neighbors to the south or something. But there is a parapet. I can see on the shadow lines that there's a parapet wall around it. I just don't know how high it is.
Yeah, if the parapet wall is the same height as the front, yeah, the backyard, any homes in the back wouldn't see it. I'm trying to look at the 45-degree image on Bing Maps. Let me see real quick and see if I can maybe see if that parapet wall is there.
I think we can also enable users to screen share on the security settings if there's something that you want to show on your screen. Just let us know and click it.
Yeah, even from Bing, I mean, the wall looks the same as the front. You can't really see the parapet on the front either. With the Bing image as well.
Just looking at where the scuppers are on the front, it looks like there's about 12 inches, maybe a little less. So that the scupper is right above where the roof line would be. So you can kind of tell above the scupper is parapet. And it looks to be just eyeballing at least 12 inches from the front view.
Yeah, I would say it's a minimum 12 inches because we had still even a few more inches, before you could see it, because I had them lift the tape. I was actually kind of surprised at how hidden they were.
You can actually see the parapet on the side that connects the house to the north.
Yeah.
Jared, if I may, from an architectural perspective, do the scuppers suggest then that the roof is draining to the front towards this, and then would then further drain to the street?
Yeah.
So then you would have that, okay. So in some cases, we've had homes where the roof drains to the rear and then there's no parapet because it just shears right off the back. But in this case, you're saying it would drain to the front, at least have a parapet.
It looks like, those look like scuppers to me, but I haven't been on the roof. So. And I think a lot of these used to be carports and stuff like that that have been converted. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. You can actually see if those those are scuppers, because if you look above where the electrical panel is, all the way to the side of where the garage, you'll actually see there's a drain, because we have to relocate a drain that's coming out in front of the electrical panel. So yeah, those scuppers that is the bottom of or I should say the top of the roof, which is, yeah, easily 12 inches at least.
And then I'm sorry to still be a little confused, but in the Google Earth shot, there's kind of in the back, the rear, in the shadow lines, it almost looks like there's a raised section of the roof to me. Am I looking at that wrong?
Yeah, you're correct. It is raised. And even there, same thing. Those panels won't be seen from the front of the house. The back, the people, that are behind there. Again, I'm not sure if there's a parapet wall or what that looks like, but again, those backyards are so small. I don't know how much it would be seen. It certainly wouldn't be seen from the other street behind it, but the backyard view is another item I don't know.
But they're all at that 10-degree pitch that you're discussing.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. So they're just at, like 12 inches at the highest point.
The hard part is that the house next door is everything's completely visible, so it's completely against anything we're talking about.
Yeah, that's fine. Like, I don't know when those panels to the house next door were approved. They were approved.
I have, excuse me, Chair, I have the background on that. They were approved some time ago, and it was one of those unfortunate experiences when, for some reason, the building, they received a permit and they didn't go through the design review board. So that when we did bring them back, there was somewhat of a compromise made. They did lowered the panels from what they originally had, but there was a compromise made because of the process wasn't followed the way it should have been.
Okay.
And then for what it's worth on this too, those panels in the back, again, they're facing south, so you won't see you're basically just seeing the side of the panels. And there certainly won't be any hanging wire or anything like that. We paint the conduit even up on the flat roof, we paint the conduit that is exposed to match the white on the flat roof.
Okay. Would anyone like to propose a motion?
Propose that we approve the roof mounted solar panel installation proposed for 241 Laguna Drive East, subject to the exhibits.
Okay. A motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. And then let's see. All the way back to my agenda. Oops. So the last, is it? Okay. A proposed policy regarding criteria for design review board approval for the solar panels on flat roofs, which is what we've been doing the last two cases. So, Jason, you want to explain, or I heard that this was Rachel's idea. Maybe she would like to explain.
Chair and board members, you'll see the brevity of the staff report portion of this. I believe what this really is an open discussion item because we have the zoning ordinance requirements. The board has used its discretion at times, and I believe that board member Dudley, if I may, I believe there was an interest on your part to speak on behalf of perhaps establishing either additional criteria or changing criteria. And as you all may know, or you should know by now, Pam and I and Susan Goodwin and other members of the city staff have been working on a code rewrite. So we are in the midst of an opportunity to make any changes we wish to portions of the code as we go through that public hearing process, which will adopt the code before the end of the year. So I know, maybe I should just open the floor for discussion on what are the reoccurring things you're saying or what you like and don't like, and we can adjust the code accordingly, so long as we don't start stepping onto statutory property rights in their ability to install solar panels. And I think there's a balance in there that we'll work with legal on, and we'll present any language that comes from the board to legal to vet it against any statutory allowances for homeowners and panel installation. So with that, I'll wrap up my little portion and see if board member Dudley would like to speak.
Yeah, okay. So basically I threw together this sort of document that's at the end of the packet that basically my goal is, my thought was that from the perspective of the board, we're just always asking, like, are we gonna see these panels from the street? And it has been no real clear way for the applicant to establish that. Sometimes it doesn't seem like they really are expecting to have to establish that. So, my thought process was that basically if we set a couple of basic parameters, then the applicant can follow some really simple formulas, take some measurements, and then be able to establish for the board if it is visible or if it's not, and if it is visible, how much. So this is just, my attempt to kind of open that conversation, and so that we can have maybe sort of a little bit better guidelines as a board to determine, like, well, is this passable or not?
Yeah, I think it's nice to have the extra information, and even if we just asked applicants for the measurements, like, how tall is your parapet? How far away is the street? Or maybe the rear property line or whatever, if we're worried about a neighboring property. But it's nice to have some dimensions, and I'm not sure what plans are required right now, if a site plan measurement, or if it's just, they just come with a roof plan.
Well, if I may, Chair and Board Member Dudley, it sounds like we could be not necessarily looking at a code modification, a zoning code ordinance modification, but rather an application requirements, which is more of an administrative function that certainly Pam could do, at the discretion, at the recommendation of the board, is as these come forward, we always do our best, how we try to bring people to the board as quickly as possible. So that we're not an impediment to development, not an impediment to homeowner improvements, but at the same time, safeguarding the city's interest in maintaining properties and keeping it attractive and all that good stuff. But if there was a direction from the board to remove that kind of ambiguity, one, by getting those measurements and making that a requirement of the application, we could establish that. And then two, as I'm also hearing, is what is the margin that we're willing to sacrifice? We've had tilted panels poking up 2 and 3 inches above the top of a known parapet and knowingly approved it, saying, well, the line of sight from the sidewalk, I mean, come on, you're not going to hardly see anything. Versus what we've seen earlier in other applications is 24, 26 inches of panels completely unscreened from 5 neighbors' yards. So in that case, I'm hearing, could you write into the code perhaps that the board could have discretion over, 10, 15% of additional height may be exposed, or those sorts of things. I'm just kind of throwing out ideas of how we could accomplish something immediately through an application requirement, and secondarily through a code basically a text amendment to the zoning ordinance.
I mean, if they can prove through their own measurements that it's not visible, that means it's fully screened, and we don't need to hear that case. That can be approved by staff. So where we come in is we're granting a little bit of wiggle room, I guess, or we're judging for ourselves when information's not present if it fits within our code. So I guess we're just, if we demand more information on the application, there's probably a few that you could approve without us having to hear it.
Yeah, it's an interesting mixed bag. You know, the number of solar panel companies, and as we've discussed in prior board meetings, you know, in most jurisdictions, there's not kind of this design review, discretionary review, but certain communities have decided that it is important to them to maintain a certain level of continuity and protection of kind of neighborhood cohesiveness and just general aesthetically pleasing looking homes and architecture, et cetera, while we accommodate the utilitarian nature of a solar panel array. And technology is always changing, right? We don't also have, 12-foot wide, microwave dishes in our backyard anymore from the 70s. So, where this is going, I'm not sure the code will adapt, but I would suggest that we start with maybe at least with
Tesla's making solid roof tiles. They just look like
I
roof tiles.
know. It's funny because I know somebody that just went to work for Tesla that's doing commercial installation Tesla solar voltaic collector panel arrays. So, yeah.
Can I ask a quick question, Jason?
Yes, please.
Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you. I apologize.
No.
Would it not make sense just to increase the questions in the application to have a picture of a height?
Up of the panel, yeah.
No, we can. I think this would be a kind of like it would be an administrative function, and we would simply say that we need the basic criteria that we need to ensure that we've met the requirements, or we really understand the application is what are you screening? Or as opposed to, I think I'm screening, this, we could just say, you got to get up there anyways, because you're going to have to install these things up there. You're going to have to go up there and take measurements anyways. Take a picture and take a measuring tape and find out how tall a parapet is. And is the parapet exist only on the front, or does it exist on the other four sides so that the board can make a wise decision on the request? I think that that's reasonable, but I mean, Pam, I know you're the one that has to deal with them at the counter. We're always balancing, but I don't see where we couldn't ask for that information with the application. It's just these solar companies are kind of funny. I'll be honest, they give us a bit of a hard time because they're not used to having to do this.
Yes, I do. I can make, I'm sorry, go on.
No, you're just going to say, and we actually have a solar company guy still on the line with us. We can ask him. But I just think if we've done 4 or 5 of these in the time that I've been on the board, and I know I'm the newest guy, but we ask the same questions every time. And we're taking people at their word because we don't have anything to document anything. So if we have the information, I just think it makes it real simple they're on the roof anyway to get the measurements to see what they need to do and check the structure. It would not be hard for them to take or ask for a photo. At least I don't think it would be, but I think it'd be a good question to ask the solar gentleman that's on that had all the good knowledge earlier.
They could even take a box of the same height of their panels, stick it on the roof and then take a picture from the street or from the neighbors or wherever we're concerned it's not screened.
At this time, in order for me to approve it administratively, I always ask for the height of the parapet, and if the panels will be either at or under that height of the parapet that completely surrounds the roof. If they say yes, then that's one of my conditions when I approve it. If they say no, that's when I bring it to the board for your judgment. on whether it should be approved. So my question is, if we add this information to the application, is it setting criteria for you that you'll only approve it if it meets that criteria, or is it just something you want to use as a tool in making the judgment?
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I feel that our job is kind of to interpret the intent of the code here, because the way that the code is written, it's basically like infinity view or angle. You need to not be able to see or I guess I should say zero angle. You shouldn't be able to see that. But I mean, in practice, we don't really need it to be that restrictive. And so when it comes to us, it's because, you know, we're trying to figure out what is the practical application when a given application circumstances. So I think if we can set parameters for like an observation point that's reasonable, that we don't want to see the panels, then the applicant should be able to very easily establish at that observation point if it is visible.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that observation point can be at a particular height that we wanted to say, like the average eye height of something. And then from the street of the property or across the street or the neighbor's window or whatever we want to say, but we just need to basically provide an observation point that we think is reasonable. And I think that would be us fulfilling, you know, our role as a board, or would allow us to fulfill our role.
I think just getting that information helps us approve more quickly. The other thing is we're looking at the aesthetics of it. So it's not like we aren't saying we can't see the panels. We just don't want to see the structure and the guts underneath of it, because you can drive, we see panels on the tiled roof portions, the tilted. So we're not against seeing the panels. We just don't like seeing these structures that are designed to tilt it to their advantage. If it was flush, you know, that's what I say, we approve everything that's flush to the roof slope is fine. So if they wanted to put panels that are flush, even if there's no parapet and you can kind of see that there's panels up there, that makes our code. It's just when they're tilting it, and these structures they use to tilt are not the most attractive things. And that's where our review comes in for design, for aesthetic purposes. So.
Would it help if Jason brought up a copy of the backup material that was submitted, what Rachel, board member Dudley submitted?
I think we understand. It's a mathematical proof that, you know, from a certain vantage point, you're not going to see the panels or see the installation. And so, and I think where our leeway comes in is like, so we don't see if you see maybe the tip of the solar panel itself, as long as you're not seeing all the structure work, maybe that's where our advisory, we have a little leeway to decide if that's going to be aesthetically okay in that neighborhood. Anyway, I think it's a good idea to get the information anyway.
Yeah, I think all the discussion and that sort of thing, I think Pam and I can talk about where we think we can address the administrative policy, which is in terms of application requirements and those sorts of things. What's brought forward to what will we want in hand before bringing it to the design review board versus what maybe something we can address in the code. I think we might want to digest this a little bit more and look at our options, and then maybe run it past Susan Goodwin too, you know, in terms of legal. Unfortunately, I'm just not familiar with statutory, like what they're allowed and not allowed. I know HOAs can't say you can't have them, but I'm not sure what else is out there, unless Pam knows.
Well, it's my understanding that there's the code has the requirements, but then the board has the purview to adjust those requirements if there's going to be a large decrease in what's produced in production. But I think what I see sometimes is the board, you're struggling with where do you draw the line You know, what is acceptable? And perhaps having this information would help you set that parameter.
Well, what I actually would like, Pam, is to have it, I'm sorry. I would like to make it as easy administratively for you guys to approve it without having to get to us. If you have all the information on the front side, then it never even comes to us, and you and Jason have made a decision and it's done. And that way we're not slowing anybody up. That's the simplest thing.
Yeah.
And we could, are you, it would be good if you're going to do that and allow us to do it administratively, it would be good to have a motion adopting this? Or approval, I mean, a vote? It is on for action.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion, or do you want to wait and run it through? If you think you need to run it through legal, I guess what we're saying, it's okay if by their measurements or by demonstrating through photographs that they can prove that the flat roof installation is not visible from the street, then staff would be able to approve it. Approve administratively.
Okay.
Is that the motion?
Clumsily, yeah.
Then I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any other discussion, Rachel? Is that something you would be agreeable to? And I guess if it's unclear if it's not going to be visible or not, then it still comes to us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was my intent, was just to kind of ease so it's not going to catch all of them, but
Yeah.
you know, this net kind of makes it more clear which ones it can catch. I mean, I didn't say that correctly, but
Yeah.
hopefully you all interpreted what I meant. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Rachel, for doing that.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, staff report on current events.
Just a few items, Chair. Pam and I have been, we haven't had too much discussion on what you reviewed under study session last month in regards to the Loma Sun Health billboard. Just wanting to know that they're still progressing with what their path of action may be, should that move forward to through a zoning process through the form of a PAD amendment or a PD amendment. A couple items. Our understanding is that Dysart and Camelback, we've still had continued interest in the property over there for the remaining pad sites. And looks like we did get finally a formal submittal for the Taco Bell, so expected on a future agenda. I haven't looked at the application yet, so all your healthy favorites are going to be located over there right next to the Dignity Health Center. The Human Being is still interested in half of one of the parcels over there. The applicant, really kind of like the broker, if you will, is looking at options of how the remnant portion of that parcel, if Human Being didn't take the whole piece, which they don't need since they're such a tiny little coffee shop retailer. Really, it's just a kiosk with drive-through. You know, what they could use the remnant portion for that would make any sense. So they're looking at that. But that's the latest. So that's where that activity is. I'm not aware of any other pending new submittals that you'll expect to see in the future, but for staff's, we'll keep you posted, of course. Pam, anything else that you've got?
Nope, I think that's it.
Is that okay?
Okay, do any board members have any reports or current events? No? Okay, motion to adjourn? Thank you. Second? Do you have a second? Thanks, Brian. Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you all.